Doesn't tape when you don't push record. Brianna's got a pencil all sharpened up. She's ready to go. So we are going to do some fraction stuff today. First one, starting out with adding fractions. We did adding and subtracting fractions that already had a common denominator. But what happens when you don't have a common denominator? If you don't have a common denominator, you have to make it so you do have a common denominator so that you're adding like terms. Yesterday we did that least common multiple thing. And so your common denominator is your least common multiple. We said here if I have 10 and 4, if I think about my multiples of 10, first is 10, 4 doesn't go into 10, the next multiple is 20, 4 goes into 20, so 20 is going to be my common denominator. I'm going to make equivalent fractions that have denominators of 20. We did equivalent fractions yesterday. We said, okay, 10 divides into 20 2 times. So I have to take 2 times that numerator. 2 times 9, going to give me 18. So 9/10 is the same thing as 18/20. 4 divides into 20 5 times. 3 times 5, going to give me 15. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my numerators. If you do 18 plus 15, you get 33. So I'm going to get 33/20. Now when it tells me to write my answer as a fraction in simplest form, they want you to leave it as a fraction. They don't want you to change it to the mixed number. They just want to make sure you can't reduce it. I don't have any common factors where I could reduce that down any lower. I can't divide them both by 2 or 3 or whatever it might be. So I'm just going to leave it as 33/20. The problem with using your calculators, your calculator thinks you want mixed numbers. So we're going to practice doing some fractions so that you can check to make sure you're doing them right with your calculator. So if you grab your calculator.
I get that now. I was doing some practice on there. And it kept telling me I had the wrong answer. And I'm like, what? Because I was doing the mixed number thing.
And some of them it will take it either way, but the farther you get into algebra, the less likely you're ever going to use a mixed number. So we want to get used to not doing it.
Right now.
You can't get that open. Get that opened up. We need to use that thing.
Oh, do I?
Do I have a calculator thrown in my bag? So on the Casio calculator, the fraction button is the one right here on, if I'm having it facing this way, my right hand side, that has the ABC on it. So to enter in my fraction 9/10, I'm going to do 9, I'm going to hit that ABC button, and then the tenths. So it sort of looks like this. 9 has a little thing like that, 9/10. I'm going to do 9/10 plus 3/4, so plus 3 fraction 4. When you hit equals on your calculator, it's going to show you this. 1 and 13/20. Everybody getting that?
No, I'm not already getting that fraction thing.
The fraction is that ABC button.
Oh, this one.
That one there, right. Press that. There you go.
Fraction.
Tenths plus 3 fraction 4ths equals. So your calculator's mode, yep, 1 and 13/20. It's the mixed number. If I want to change on my calculator from the mixed number to the improper fraction, I'm going to hit the shift button, which is way up here on the top corner, and then the fraction button. So if you hit shift and that ABC button, then what shows up for the answer?
33/20.
33/20. So it's kind of a complicated process,
Mhm.
but we get there. The calculator's default mode is to do the mixed number instead of the improper fraction. While we are on the calculator thing, because your calculator's probably set for scientific notation mode, and sometimes that messes up people, let's fix our calculators so we all have them in the same mode so that when we get our answers, we're hopefully getting them mostly how we want to see them. There's a button up on the top next to the big one that says Mode by it. We're going to hit that button 3 times. So Mode, Mode, Mode. Your choices should say Fix, Sci, or Norm. Norm's for normal. We want to be normal people. We're going to pick 3. And we're actually going to do Normal 2. That way when your answers show up when we get into different things, it doesn't pop it into scientific notation or some other mode we don't want to have it look at, or it doesn't round them off. So we should now be good that we all get that same thing. All right, we did that. Let's go ahead and go back to our fractions here. So, we want to add 5/9 and 5/6. First thing we need to figure out is what is our common denominator?
I had one question. Before. So if we have a fraction like this that can be broken down, can we figure that out on here too?
Your calculator will do it automatically.
Oh, okay.
But otherwise, say you happen to have 24/16 for fun. If I put that in my calculator, 24 fraction button 16ths. If you hit equals, it gives you the mixed number, 1.5, right? Getting that? Then you would hit shift and the fraction button, and it's going to say, oh, that's going to be 3/2. Because this was divisible by 8, this was divisible by 8. 24 divided by 8 is 3, 16 divided by 8 is 2. So if it's an improper fraction where the calculator gives you the mixed number, if it's a proper fraction, it just gives you the right answer. But otherwise, you've got to change it from the mixed number into the improper fraction. Alrighty, so 5/9 plus 5/6. Common denominator. What would be my common denominator? 18, right? 9 divides into 18, and 6 divides into 18. By the way, if you're stuck and you can't figure out the least common denominator, you can always find a common one by multiplying these two numbers together. Most of the time it's bigger than what you need, but if you're stuck and you just absolutely can't figure out one, multiply your denominators together and you'll probably end up reducing at the end, but it should work out okay. There's Rose.
Sorry.
Making our equivalent fractions then. 9 divides into 18. 2 times the 5 on top is 10. 6 goes into 18. 3 times the 5 on top, 15. So now we're going to add 10 plus 15, 25 18ths. Now if you're really looking at that and you weren't sure, does that reduce down or not? Again, we do 25 fraction 18. The calculator is going to give you a mixed number because it's an improper fraction. Shift and the fraction button. Oh, yep, it stayed 25 18ths. I can't do anything with it. Subtracting, same thing. I have to find a common denominator. This time I'm taking 7/8 minus 7/12. So I'm trying to think of my least common multiple if I have an 8 and a 12.
24.
24, exactly. So 8 divides into 24. 3 times 7, 21. 12 divides into 24. 2 times 7, 14. So 21 minus 14 is 7. 7/24. And again, on this one, we end up where we can't simplify it, so that's going to be my answer. fractional part of a circle. It says how much of the circle is shaded. Write your answer as a fraction in simplest form. So we have a circle here, part of it's in white. We want to find the part that's in gray. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add these two fractions together to figure out how much of it is in white. So we just did that. We're going to take the 1/7 plus the 1/2. We're going to find a common denominator. My common denominator is 14. And then we're going to make our equivalent fractions. 1/7 is equal to how many 14ths? 2. 7 went into 14. 2 times 1 is 2. 1/2 is equal to how many 14ths? 7. 2 went in there. 7 times 1, 7. So we have 9/14ths of our circle that's in white. Now they're going to tell you if I have one whole circle, I'm going to have the number 1. But I want to write it in terms of 14ths. Any whole number written as a fraction would be the same number over itself. 2 over 2 is equal to 1. 3 over 3 is equal to 1. Since I want to be in 14ths, 14 over 14, if I write 14, is equal to 1. The whole pie chart would be 14 out of 14, right? The white part is 9 out of 14. So if I take that off of the 14 out of 14, how much do I have left for this gray section?
5.
5 out of 14. Now just for fun, if I added all the sections up in this pie chart, what should I end up with for an answer?
14.
Or 1, right? So we're going to take our calculator. We're going to put in 1 fraction 7, 1/7, plus 1 fraction 2, 1/2, plus our 5 fraction 14ths. If I hit equal, what does my calculator tell me? 1. Hey, it worked. So we must have the right answer. We have one whole circle. So number 5, same problem, kind of problem. I want to find out how much of the circle is shaded. We're first of all going to find out how much is not shaded. So we're going to take 1/3 plus 1/5, and our common denominator would be 15. 1/3 is how many 15ths? 5. 1/5 is how many 15ths? 3. So if I add 8/15ths is the part in the white. We know the whole circle is 1, but we are going to write 1 as what for this problem? 15 out of 15, right? If we take off the 8/15ths that is in white, how much is the gray section? 7 out of the 15, 7/15ths. Easy enough, right? So go ahead and do number 6 and see what you come up with for an answer there. Board's going crazy. What you come up with for an answer? 3/14. Hey, that's the same thing I got. I worked it out up there on the board in case you didn't get 3/14. My 2/7 plus my 1/2 would be 4/14 plus 7/14, which is 11/14. And when I subtracted it from 1, I got 3/14. Product of a unit fraction and a whole number. A unit fraction is just a fraction that has a numerator of 1. So 1/2, 1/3, 1/5, 1/122, whatever it might be. When I'm multiplying a unit fraction times a whole number, I really end up dividing, because what I'm doing is I'm taking 1/3. By the way, the word of in algebra means times. So even though it tells me I'm going to times, that's what that means. 1/3 of 18 times 18. I would put 18 over 1. And what I end up doing then is dividing this into here, because I can reduce down my fractions. 3 goes into here once and into 18 6 times. And when I multiply fractions, I multiply across the top and across the bottom. So I end up with 6 over 1, which is just 6. Well, that's a whole lot of work for something you probably could do in your head, right? So when I actually take a unit fraction times a whole number, I'm just dividing that denominator into my whole number. 1/5 of 25. Well, 5 divides into 25 5 times. So 1/5 times 25 is just going to be 5. If you want to write it up the long way, you can. But the shortcut is just to remember, oh, I'm just going to divide that denominator into my whole number. So 1/4 of 28. 1/4 times 28. 4 goes into 28 7 times. I'm just going to end up with 7 then. Then we get into a little more complicated ones. Same thing, since I'm working with whole numbers, technically that whole number would be written over 1. And on these ones, they're going to make it again where this number is going to divide into this number. Sometimes you can't do that, but on these ones, they made them that way. So first thing I'm going to do is reduce my fraction. 4 divides into 24 6 times, right? And then I'm going to multiply my numerators. 3 times 6 gives me 18. I get 18 over 1, so I just leave it as 18, because 18 divided by 1 is still 18. So 2/7 of 35. 7 divides into 35. Everybody all at one time? 5. And then I can multiply. 2 times 5, 10. Pondering that, huh?
7 times 5 is 35.
Right.
Where are you coming up with that 10? Oh,
2
okay,
here
the 2
times the
and
5 here, because now we have a number on top of that fraction. Before we just had a 1 up there, right? So 1 times whatever didn't make any difference. But now we have a different numerator. Here we had to take the 3 times the 6. Here we take the 2 times the 5. So now try that one. And hopefully you came up with 35. Because 6 went into 42 7 times, and then we have 5 times 7, 35, right? Now, of course, again, I didn't talk about using your calculator, but it works the same way as when you do adding. If I want to do 5 6 times 42, I would do 5 fraction 6 times 42, and I'd hit equals, and my calculator tells me 35. So I want you to do them on your paper, and if you're not comfortable and you think, I don't know if I did that right, punch it into your calculator and check to see if you did it right. If you didn't, then try to figure out why you didn't get the right answer. Did you divide wrong? So on fraction multiplication now, If I could reduce, I would, but in these ones where they're starting out here, they're not going to have any reducing yet. We'll get to somewhere we can reduce. Here, I don't have a common
Scott
thing
Morgan, please report to the IT department.
between the 5 and the
Scott Morgan
8.
to the IT department.
I also don't have a common thing between the 3 and the 7, so I can't do the dividing like I did on those previous ones. So all I'm really going to do when I multiply is just multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So I'm going to do the 5 times the 7. 5 times 7. Where did I come up with that? I'm going to do 5 times 3. How about I try that first? 5 times 3 is 15. I'm going to do 7 times 8 is 56. And we couldn't reduce it down, and so that's just going to be my answer.
So less simple, just write straight across the board.
Right. So 14, 7 times 5, 35, 8 times 9, 72. So number 15, my answer is going to be, gosh darn, that's the same problem as number 13, only backwards. Sometimes the computer generator is not very creative. Now, 16, 17, and 18, now they're going to give us ones where we can reduce. We can either reduce before we multiply or we can reduce after we multiply. I like to reduce before I multiply because then my numbers aren't so big. I'm going to do this first one both ways just so you can see the answers are going to be the same. So first of all, I'm going to do it like we did on the previous ones, just multiplying across. 4 times 10 would give me 40. 5 times 3 would give me 15. And then I look and say, oh, 40 and 15 are both divisible by 5. So if I divide by 5, 40 divided by 5 is 8. 15 divided by 5 is 3. I can't reduce that down anymore. Now, if I do it the other way, taking my shortcut, 4/5 times 10/3. Here, if I notice that 5 and 10 have a common factor of 5, I can reduce them before I multiply. 5 divides in here once and in here twice. Kind of like I did with those whole number ones. Now if I multiply, 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. Holy cow, I got the same answer. Again, if you do this one on your calculator, because it's an improper fraction, you're going to end up with the mixed number first. So if I just do it on my calculator for fun, 4 fraction 5 times 10 fraction 3 gives me 2 2/3. If I hit shift and the fraction button, 8/3 is my answer. So if I look at number 17, if I reduce first, the 5 and the 10 again can be reduced. 5 goes into 5 once, into 10 twice. The 3 and the 4 don't have anything in common, otherwise I could try to reduce those also. Multiplying across the top, I'm going to have a 3. Multiplying across the bottom, I'm going to have an 8. That's your answer, exactly. So try to do number 18 and see what you come up with for your answer. I heard her whispering already. So I can reduce the 3 with the 6. 3 goes into 6 2 times. So 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 7 is 7. So we get 8 7s. Reciprocal. That's a big mouthful of a word. Reciprocal just means you take your number and you flip it upside down. The reciprocal of 3/10 is 10/3. I just took my number, flipped it the other way around.
So reciprocal is just,
You switch the numerator and the denominator. If you want to put it in math terms.
well, I want to put it where I can use my notes.
So how you know, you just flip it the other way around. Now when I have a whole number, if I have the whole number 8, to make it a fraction I have to put it over 1, right? So if I have the fraction 8 over 1, its reciprocal then is going to be 1 over 8, exactly. So anytime I have a whole number, its reciprocal is going to be a unit fraction, have a 1 on top. So the reciprocal of 14 again, since that's a whole number, I would put it over 1 first, and then I flip it upside down, 1/14. The reciprocal of 12/7 would be 7/12. The reciprocal of 4 is 1/4. And the reciprocal of 8/9, 9/8. Now why in the heck do we have to know about reciprocals? Because when we divide with fractions, we end up multiplying by the reciprocal. So whenever we have division with fractions, that number after the division, you're going to change it to multiplying by its reciprocal. This problem here is going to be changed to 5/3, notice that stayed the same, times the reciprocal of that number after the division sign. The reciprocal of 9 is 1/9, exactly. Now I can do my multiplying because I already know how to multiply fractions. 5 times 1 is 5. 3 times 9 is 27. And again, if I wanted to check it with my calculator, I would just put in 5 fraction 3 divided by 9. And sure enough, hey, I got 5/27. So on number 23, I'm dividing fractions. I need to rewrite my problem as a multiplying problem. How am I going to rewrite that problem? 5 6 times 1/4, exactly. And then if I multiply that, I get 5/24. Now number 24 again says divide. They switched it around, but you only flip the one after the division. So if I'm going to rewrite this problem, I'm going to write it as 4 over 1 times 6 over 7, right? The whole number 4, we want to put it over 1 just so it looks pretty. And then we can multiply and we would get sleeping out there. 24 over 7. So same thing applies here when they're both fractions. When I have dividing fractions, the one after the division is going to get flipped over. I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. So this problem I'm going to rewrite 14/15 times, I'm going to flip that number over, 6/5. Now on this one, if I look, the 14 and the 5 don't have anything where I could reduce it, but the 6 and the 15 I can reduce. 6 and 15 both have what for a common factor? 3. So I can reduce it down. 3 goes into 6 2 times, 3 goes into 15 5 times. 14 times 2, 28. 5 times 5, 25. Again, notice it says fraction. Write it as a fraction. It doesn't say write a mixed number. It says write a fraction in simplest form. So, number 26. If I take 5/16 and I divide it by 9/10, how would I rewrite my problem? 5/16 times 10/9. Then I look to see if I can reduce. The 5 and the 9 I can't reduce, but the 10 and the 16 are both divisible by 2. 2 goes into 10 5 times, 2 goes into 16 8 times. And so 5 times 5 is 25, and 8 times 9, 72. Come on. My board doesn't want to move. Didn't that one get a number on it? It went to, there's no 27 behind there. Did she fix that or did she miss typing it? Oh, I don't know. She must have fixed it by the time she printed. 6 sevenths divided by 4 ninths then. I'm going to change that problem to 6 sevenths times 9 fourths. Can I reduce it at all? I can do the 6 and the 4 by 2. So 3 and 2. And then if I multiply, 27 fourteenths. All right, is that the end? All right, so you're going to go on your pie chart on Alex.